everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today for the 26th webinar of Energy Evaluation Asia Pacific, which is a vibrant community of energy and evaluation professionals across the Asia Pacific region. My name is Nazir. I'm your host for today's webinar. I would like to inform you that this webinar is being recorded and would like to invite you to kindly introduce yourself in the chat, sharing your name, country, and your organization. This is quick overview of an agenda. We will have welcome remarks from Ed, then we will have presentation from two of our speakers from UNDP, Vijaya Lakshmi, who is Chief Corporate and Thematic Evaluations at UNDP, and she will be sharing about impact evaluations at UNDP in general. And Ben will be talking about evaluation of UNDP's approaches to grid energy. We will have around 10 to 15 minutes of discussion, and then we will be closing the webinar at 1 p.m. Without further ado, I will invite Ed. Ed, over to you.
Thank you. I'm going to share my slides. So I want to have some introductory comments about EEAP. It is a community of practice specializing in energy evaluation across the Asia Pacific region. It was established as a nonprofit in 2018 and is modeled after the one we've had in the US since 1983 and a similar one in Europe since 2010. And we try to take a leadership role in expanding the practice of and capacity for objective evaluation in the energy efficiency and renewable energy program and policy arena. We develop resources and professional expertise to answer complex questions related to energy. Including which actions pay off, how energy programs and policies can be improved, and what actions can be scaled up. And we try to foster the development of these communities through workshops, conferences, webinars like this, and other web-based tools. So the focus is on a collaborative approach, working with diverse stakeholders, governments, NGOs, research institutions. We're focusing on the importance of robust evaluation and data analysis to improve these programs and policies. And we want to conduct capacity building initiatives, the ones I've talked to you earlier, so we can enhance both energy program and policy understanding and implementation. We prioritize post-implementation monitoring and evaluation. And by tracking the outcomes and impacts, we hope to contribute to better policies aligned with regional development and sustainable goals. We have a steering committee, an advisory committee, and a coordinator. Nazir's our coordinator. I just do want to mention the passing of one of our steering committee members, Hidetoshi Nakakami from Japan. I've known him for many, many years. He's a great fellow, very sharp, led a lot of initiatives in Japan. I have some text here you can read, but particularly I was working with him on the energy ESCOs industry, both in Japan and globally, and he was very instrumental. And I was glad I'd known him. I'm sorry he just passed away. So why evaluation? Why are we focusing on evaluation? And I will read this. At a moment when societies face unprecedented technological and environmental risks, the role of science has never been more critical. From climate change to artificial intelligence, evidence-based decision-making is indispensable. Yet public trust in science is eroding and political support for scientific institutions is weakening. This paradox threatens not only effective policymaking, but the long-term capacity of societies to anticipate, adapt, and innovate. And this is from the former director of the Independent Evaluation Office of the Global Environmental facility, Juha Uta. Again, why EEAP and energy evaluations, focusing on policy adoption and implementation, behavioral change, and also the economic and environmental benefits. We, in addition to the webinar, we have our, of course, own website. We're active on LinkedIn in particular. We have a YouTube channel where all the webinars that we've held have been recorded and are available there as well. And on the bottom, you can see our website and learn more about us. Today's webinar, as Nazir mentioned, is impact evaluation at UNDP. We have two speakers from the UNDP. Vijaya will talk about impact evaluation at UNDP, and Ben will talk about the evaluation of UNDP approaches to off-grid energy. We do have another webinar coming up. This is on Singapore time, on June 5th with the National University of Singapore. And those interested in buildings or in data centers, I encourage you to attend. There. Okay. So Vijaya Lakshmi is the chief of the section for corporate and thematic evaluations at the UNDP Independent Evaluation Office, where she leads a multidisciplinary team. She conducts both global and country level evaluations and is involved in national evaluation capacity development and represents IEO in the executive board deliberations. Vijaya has over 25 years of international development policy, evaluation, and applied research experience. And I'll stop there for her, but I will introduce Ben, who's an evaluation specialist in the Independent Evaluation Office as well. And he's conducted global evaluations on energy access, climate resilience, biodiversity, and social protection, among other topics. He's currently conducting an impact evaluation of UNDP approaches to off-grid energy. So what I'd like this to do, we'll have two presentations, but I won't interrupt them. Vijay will hand it over to Ben when she's finished with her remarks. And then we'll have questions at the end on both of the presentations. So I will now hand it over to Vijaya and let her take over.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Nasir, both of you for those introductory remarks and for inviting Ben and me for this webinar series. Thank you so much. We're very pleased to join you all today, as Ed said, to share about impact evaluation at UNDP and Ben on off-grids energy evaluation. I know this topic resonates deeply with this group. Ed gave us about the EEAP agenda, and one cannot agree more on the importance of evaluation. He cited from Juha more so in the times of the AI today. So having agreed with that, I just would like to mention that we both, I think, share same concerns in terms of how we go about this fundamental challenge of addressing the different complexities of the impact evaluation. Evaluation itself is complex, and impact evaluation adds to that complexity. And coming from a development cooperation agency and the complex landscape of it, I think there's one fundamental question we all face every day, and which is very close to our heart. How do we know that what we do and all our efforts we put in every day is truly making a difference? Is it changing the lives of the people it is intended for? I think that's one of the fundamental questions, which also is very close to our evaluation office and all of us who are there. And impact measurement and impact evaluations are one of the one of the ways of determining if the development interventions we are undertaking are making a difference. And in the development cooperation, impact evaluations are often viewed as an accountability tool, increasing for a long time, just to figure out whether the resources are used for what it is actually intended. But I think this perspective is evolving for good, and impact evaluations are increasingly seen as critical for learning and program adaptation. And I think that's where that's the starting point for us, particularly for the impact evaluations at UNDP. As we were developing these guidances, I hope those who joined this webinar had a chance to look at them. We took a step back to look at a broader landscape of impact evaluation in bilateral and multilateral organization. On one side, we saw that there are these international financial institutions, organizations like World Bank, which have traditionally invested massively in impact evaluation. For example, World Bank's Development Impact Group alone has over 300 staff. On the other side, historically, the UN system, the United Nations system, hasn't invested at the same scale or haven't much progressed on impact measurement and impact evaluation. While we have great pockets of impact work, for example, UNICEF and FAO have impact research units, our World Food Program, and our own organization has been carrying out impact evaluation of the climate programs. But overall, I think the focus on impact measurement and impact evaluations have been limited. But looking at why is there this huge gap between the IFIs and UN? Why didn't the UN jump into this in a big way a decade or more ago? I think it's not a lack of interest or rigor. I think it comes down to the fundamental complex nature of the work UN does. Let me explain this by looking at UNDP, which also illustrates why we needed our own unique approach to measuring impact and evaluating impact. Let us consider where UNDP actually sits in global development ecosystem. Those of you who are not that familiar with UNDP, UNDP operates in over 170 countries, diverse contexts, including fragile contexts. Unlike the multilateral banks that rely heavily on massive, predictable capital investments, UNDP's footprint is different. It focuses on policy advisory support, capacity building, and complex development program implementation, as I mentioned, even in fragile contexts, which requires essentially highly adaptable program designs, navigating less predictable, less capital intensive funding than multilateral banks. Programs in areas of governance, employment and livelihoods, crisis management, and environmental sustainability, which are core areas of UNDP support, do not always lend themselves to impact assessment. My own assessment is that about 40% of the programs of UNDP actually lends itself to impact measurement and impact assessment. UNDP's programs are of varied scope and scale within the country as well as across countries, which is often in collaboration with the governments, are part of development efforts of other agencies. Because of this, measuring UNDP's impact is rarely a simple linear path. UNDP does not just build a hospital or put in place off-grid structures. It works with the governance systems to create health policies or energy policies, or develop public-private finance mechanisms and supply chains that allow the country to build and sustain its own systems. Therefore, UNDP's impact is often, I would say, indirect, mediated through the very systems and institutions UNDP seeks to build and strengthen. This makes attribution incredibly complex. We cannot simply apply standard, rigid measurement models. We require tailored approaches to measurement that can account for UNDP's cumulative, system-driven, and context-dependent contributions. So it's precisely for this reason and the operational realities of UNDPs, we developed the impact evaluation guidance. As you may know, there are many guidances out there, but we wanted something very customized for UNDP's program realities. We needed a framework that empowered UNDP's country officers to measure its impact to sustainable development with absolute rigor, but also with a more practical and real-world flexibility. So this suite of resources was developed to provide a clear and practical direction on when and how impact evaluation fits within UNDP's broader results management framework. There are four guidances. One is rolling out the decentralized impact evaluation. Decentralized evaluations are the evaluations done by the country offices of UNDP. There are over 145 country offices of UNDP around the globe. This outlines a strategy for institutionalizing impact evaluation. Then the guidance for the program managers. We wanted to help the program managers take a call on whether they should be doing an impact evaluation or not at all, and if at all, how they should go about it. So there's one guidance for them. And the third one is on impact measurement data. As I mentioned, it's a little new area for UNDP, and UNDP does not have impact data. So how the organization should build, the design, collect, and manage impact data as part of its results management framework is this guidance discusses. And the last one is on approaches and methods. I'll a little bit dwell on it later in the presentation. But this has many approaches and methods, and which are also presented in easy-to-use modules in our Evaluation Methods Center. So notwithstanding the challenges of the nature of UNDP's program, capturing and assessing impact matters for UNDP. And there's increasing efforts in this direction. In its corporate policies and strategies, UNDP has committed itself to strengthen impact measurement and impact evaluation. And this is also outlined in UNDP's evaluation policy, that UNDP recognizes that it should go beyond merely tracking results to proving true causal impact to the stakeholders, allowing UNDP to confidently isolate the changes its interventions actually caused. The evidence is crucial, just not for demonstrating UNDP's impact, but also empowering UNDP's program teams to decide when to scale, when to replicate, and when to redesign its programs. So what do we mean by, Ben, can we go to the next slide? Yeah. So what do we mean by impact and impact evaluation? We define impact as the significant effects, whether positive or negative, intended or unintended, primary or secondary, that are directly attributable to UNDP's interventions. And impact evaluation is a systematic empirical approach to assessing the causal effects of UNDP's interventions. It seeks to answer the critical questions: so what? Are our interventions leading to significant transformative change? To claim this impact credibly, we must go beyond simply observing the change and ask, would this have happened anyway? This brings us to a non-negotiable concept, the counterfactual. The counterfactual represents a hypothetical what-if scenario illustrating what would have happened to a target population if UNDP's programs had not been implemented. By comparing the actual observed outcomes to this counterfactual, we can isolate the effects of UNDP's program from all other external factors at play. This rigorous comparison is what allows to move from simple correlation to true causation. So this is very central to impact evaluation of UNDP. Because of the nature of UNDP's programs, we have to be very clear about definitions. We emphasize on impact continuum, different levels of impact we will be assessing as part of the impact evaluation. Of course, transformative changes doesn't happen overnight. At the same time, not all UNDP programs are long-term. UNDP's programs are often from 1 year to 3 years largely. There are sections of programs which are longer term, but a predominant section of UNDP's programs are for a duration of about 3 years. So we wanted to account for this reality. Recognizing this, our impact evaluations include various timeframes, depending on what it is meaningful to measure. So the longer term effects are the classical impact evaluations, which assess the longer term effects of UNDP's programs 5 years beyond. For example, one would like to look at governance initiatives, whether it led to reduction of systemic corruption or impact of a global fund on HIV/AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria, on the well-being of the targeted population, or off-grid support, which Ben will be talking about, in transforming the lives of the households that were targeted. Then the intermediate medium-term effects, when the longer-term measurement is not a reality, we look at the proxies like assessing if a livelihood program, for example, has successfully diversified the household income sources. I think this is one of the most closer to UNDP's program realities. And then the short-term effects, where quite a bit of bulk of UNDP's programs is looking at immediate catalytic changes that that leads to interventions, such as, for example, that results from the interventions such as, for example, training programs for local community leaders or peace building efforts, which are often for 6 months to 1 year kind of programs, but there are concrete impacts out of these even shorter term interventions. So we include in the impact and impact measurement, impact evaluation definitions, these timeframes as well. And we do recognize that as UNDP is building its impact measurement and impact evaluation capacities, we need to also account for programs that did not plan for impact data or for impact evaluations from the design stage. So we have kind of retrospective impact evaluations and those integrated evaluations which planned for impact evaluation. So we do provide the guidance, takes these into consideration and navigates how they should go about these two scenarios. And coming to the guidance on how UNDP should go about it, we have a very deliberate and strategic roadmap on how UNDP should develop its impact evidence as well as impact evaluation capacities. This is not just about randomly conducting impact evaluation, but about building a sustainable a system through a phased approach. We talk about laying the foundation for defining a clear vision why the agency wanted to do an impact evaluation in the first place, and how it should go about engaging the stakeholders, which is very critical because impact data can be challenged by the governments, which is the immediate partner of UNDP, and then laying the foundation and they're building the institutional architecture where UNDP will establish the necessary governance structures, skills, and a strategic roadmap on how and what to evaluate. And then operationalizing this plan, giving time frame for that, piloting evaluation for early wins, and creating practical toolkits for its staff and integrating the process into the project cycle itself eventually. Finally, what is most critical is that it's not just about generating this evidence, but how that evidence gets looped into the learning cycle of the organization is very critical. And there is steps on how UNDP should go about it, on how it should disseminate the evidence it generates to better inform program and management decisions and to inform scaling of UNDP's successful interventions. So one of the points I would like to emphasize amongst several things that are covered in these guidances is the importance of strategic choices and when not to do an impact evaluation. I think there's quite a bit of importance given to impact evaluations. Actually, in our office, Ben is now leading an impact evaluation. Several colleagues wanted to join the impact evaluation because it has a kind of attraction. Somewhere in the hierarchy, it see it on the top. But what we say in the guidance is that impact evaluation need not be an automatic choice. What we wanted to say is impact evaluation should be a strategic choice. It should be, it's not a blanket requirement. We emphasize this to the organization as well, because often due to the push of the donors, there is a sudden spurge to do impact evaluation. We have seen it in the case of the Global Climate Fund, where there's a push for impact evaluation, and suddenly we see a surge of impact evaluations, even when the program is not congenial for such an assessment. So what we say is not every program is suited for impact evaluation. The impact evaluations are resource intensive, highly analytical endeavors. It takes a lot of time and effort. So recognizing when an impact evaluation is impractical is as important as knowing how to conduct an impact evaluation. So we propose that we should reserve these rigorous evaluations for interventions that are innovative, where we are testing new hypotheses, for programs that are ripe for replication or scaling up, where evidence is critical for future investment, and for programs of high strategic importance. We must evaluate when evidence generated will actually be used for critical decisions. If the impact evaluations are not used for decision making, there's no point in doing an impact evaluation. I wish to also flag for our discussion with this group the considerations for comparative groups, which are even higher for impact studies than impact evaluations, which should make us think many times before embarking upon an impact evaluation. On the decision tree, we have a few decisions.
You have a few minutes left before we go to bed.
Sure. Thanks, Ed. I won't go into details of this. This is to help the program managers to make a choice whether they should be doing an impact evaluation or not. If yes, what kind of an approach or method they should be choosing. If no, what kind of other alternatives they have. So this is a very easy to use tool, which they can very quickly come to a conclusion whether they should be going forward with an impact evaluation or not. Next slide, please. On the methods, I'll try to be brief on this as well. I think there is always a conception that randomized controlled trials are the gold standard for impact evaluation. But for us in UNDP, this is not an automatic option, nor always the best fit for the kind of programs UNDP does. So because of UNDP's work is more than just numbers, we propose a mixed method approach, use of quasi-experimental methods to establish the causal attribution of what happened, but pair with qualitative analysis to understand how and why. We think this integrated approach best suits for UNDP. So we have outlined several of these methods and approaches in the guidance as well as on our methods portal. I would like to stop here. I would request you to take a look at the guidance as well as at our evaluation methods portal. It's to help those who do not have much time, who are program people, who are not evaluators like us, who can spend too much time. Just it's a 4-page modules on each of the methods and approaches. I would request you take a look at that. I would be happy to clarify your questions on UNDP's impact evaluation journey during the discussion. Over to you, and Ben. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Ben, we'll hand it over to you and your slides. And then I have some questions, but I'm going to hold them till after Ben presents.
Thank you, Ed, and thank you, Vijaya. I'm just going to share my screen if you give me a moment. But well, firstly, thank you, colleagues, for inviting us. It's nice to be with like minds. And as Vijaya presented, the overall framing for impact evaluation in UNDP, I'm going to just briefly talk us through our first ever impact evaluation, which happily is on a topic that I think is well suited to the members of this group. It's on UNDP's approaches to off-grid energy, and particularly off-grid energy access. So let me just briefly, as Vijaya mentioned, choosing or doing an impact evaluation in UNDP is not an automatic, not a given. There was a lot of thought process that went into why we would do it for off-grid energy in particular. And on the screen now, you'll see three of the main considerations that we thought that this might be a viable topic and an important area to look into UNDP's work. The first, as I know people on this call will appreciate, is that energy access is good for development. It's positioned as SDG 7 and linked, sometimes called the golden thread to the SDGs. But that link is not necessarily automatic. It's not the case necessarily that you provide a supply to energy and everybody starts benefiting immediately and leading to development. There's lots of things that can go wrong in between. And neither does it also reflect as a positive for everybody. I think we may also be aware that there's particular gender considerations that may determine whether people are able to access energy or to be able to convert that access into development gains. So one of the principal reasons why we thought this would be a good topic to see whether actually energy is being established and whether it is reliable, affordable, and sustainable, and looking at who is able to most benefit from this. As I alluded to, we're looking at off-grid energy in particular. That's an area that UNDP works to a great extent in, because it particularly aligns with its development objectives and also its emphasis on leave no one behind. So we're really talking about perhaps last mile connectivity, people in areas that the national grid may not reach in the near term, and also where other development partners may not be able to work. I'm going to talk a little bit about UNDP and how it approaches off-grid energy in a moment, but as you'll see when I do so, there are a diversity of approaches that UNDP works on. And so because it's been working on energy access for a long time, we're now moving towards 2030 and the development of and the goals of the SDG 7 and other big commitments to increase energy access. And amongst that, UNDP is creating a new phase of one of its flagship programs. There is a lot to learn about which of UNDP's approaches are more effective than others. And what I should say, if it's not particularly clear, but I'll come on to it, this is a global evaluation of UNDP's work in this area. It's not an evaluation of any one particular project or any one particular country, but a look at its approaches as a whole. And I'll come on to what those look like. So to give people a sense, we've kind of bucketed what UNDP does in four main areas. As Vijaya was mentioning, a lot of what UNDP does is at the kind of the policy advisory phase, which we've kind of bucketed under an energy governance and capacity component. And within there, we've got planning, regulations, and skills and capacities as well. There's a finance component to what it does in terms of, because UNDP is not intending to be or doesn't have the resources to be the organization that provides energy to a large number of people. It's there to be a catalyst, so it's there to enable others, to investors, either commercial or concessional, to bring in other forms of financing to take these things to scale. And the big bucket you see at the bottom is the kind of the system level support, whether that's through mini grids or individual solar home systems or other forms of support, and a range of connections there at the community level, the service level, the businesses, and principally for households, and a range of other types of support there around business development and also productive use overlays, so that, as I mentioned, development energy access might be provided, but it should also contribute to development gains. I mentioned this was a global evaluation. On the screen here, you'll see principally a lot of African countries because of the remaining gap for energy access, but also, and of area of interest to this group, we think, or we know, there's a lot that could be learned from what has been achieved on SDG 7 and in Asia, and we're principally looking at Nepal and Cambodia for there to see if we could find out what worked there and how impactful that was, and whether there were any lessons that we could transfer across the countries. So we'll be looking at these throughout the evaluation. Not all with the same level of intensity. The ones in bold are where we'll be doing a deeper dive into the countries, and in 5 of these we'll be doing a community level survey, and they are Senegal, Burundi, Malawi, and Nigeria and Nepal. So just to give you a sense of the types of impacts that we're interested in and what we'll be looking for, I've alluded to some of these already, but we've bucketed these into 4 main impact areas. One is at the energy access, which is really at the system level, to see whether a system is being appropriately set up and being sustained over time and affordable. The next area is that this leads to equitable benefits, and that should be, connected to and sufficient for equipment and services that contribute to development, equally benefiting both men and women. There is, because a lot of UNDP's resourcing for this comes through the Global Environment Facility, an area that is around, or an interest area of ours, which is whether this is whether the renewable energy access is displacing non-renewable sources, so kerosene or diesel or even biomass. And so these first 2 buckets here of impacts are areas where I think it's already an established practice to be doing impact evaluations of energy work, and maybe some on this call have already done some impact evaluations in this area. The next 2 are, I think, more experimental, at least for us, but recognizing that actually a majority of what UNDP does is in the enabling environment. We want to look and see whether we can do something quite robust in terms of understanding whether the enabling environment in each country is becoming more conducive to public and private investors, and whether that is contributing to different resources for scale up and expanding energy access within each country. So you can see there the tests that we have for each area, and in our evaluation design, these are broken down into a set of criteria and a set of observations and assessments that we'll be making. As Vijaya mentioned, though, however, the comparator is important, and this is how we will be using the comparators. Why we're using the comparators. One is to identify the difference made by UNDP support. So, if there is development benefits that are associated with UNDP work, we want to make sure that, these weren't just things that happened naturally in the context already, that it really was associated with UNDP's energy system or the approaches that it took, to ascertain whether certain approaches are more effective than others, and we'll take a very a very targeted approach to those, given how many approaches there are. But we would like to say whether, UNDP should be doing more or less, or doing things particularly different based on the evidence of what has worked. And also targeting these to areas that UNDP could make a decision that would improve its programming. So in discussions with UNDP, we've been speaking about where they've been going next and where they may be able to contribute or put more resourcing. And I'm hoping that the evaluation will be able to generate some lessons that would help guide those decisions. Coming down to a bit of a detailed unpacking these comparators a bit further. I won't go into too much detail, but just to say that for each impact area, we will consider a temporal comparison, so before and after, and a group comparison, so areas where the intervention has been applied and where it hasn't been applied. We're not finding a huge amount of baseline studies for where UNDP's work has been. I think there are in some countries, but it's certainly not across the board. So we'll be using retrospective questions and are now designing the survey to make sure that we do that in the most robust way possible. And then there will be an intervention group that have received UNDP support. And then as our counterfactual, having given this a lot of thought, we would like to find groups that are as similar to the intervention group as they were prior to receiving the intervention, but who still use the same energy mix as the intervention groups did prior to receiving the intervention. The temporal comparison remains for the enabling environment support and the scale-up support. I don't think going to be so easy to do a group comparison for this, but we will keeping an eye out for places where we could do so, perhaps within different subnational regions, where we can look at whether a policy has been implemented in one particular region and not in another, and to see whether that had led to any differences in energy access. But I think a feeling is that a lot of these policies will be national, so we may not find so much in this area. Just before closing, I'll give you just a brief overview of our broad data collection needs, or what we're looking at. So in terms of access and affordability and quality, we'll be using a modified multi-tier framework household survey, which I think many may be familiar with. And then for various levels, doing different things in terms of site visits, focus group discussions, and a deeper look at key informer interviews with investors, with governments, with other implementers. I should have mentioned this at the start, but we're now in the this is now moving ahead very quickly. We've just moved from the design phase to the implementation phase, so we're now in the process of finalizing the design of the survey and the case study for each country, and then we hope to have our analysis ready in about July or August of this time, and the report by the end of the year. So I'm going to pause there and head back to you, Ed, and I look forward to any questions. Thank you.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you. A lot of questions for you, I'm sure. And let's see. First, I open it up, of course, to the people who are on the call, on the webinar. So if you have a question, feel free to ask or raise your hand or put it in the chat. I'll look at the chat right now. Right. Okay. I don't right now see any. Again, anybody just unmute yourself if you have a question and ask. Otherwise, I will ask questions, but this is an opportunity for people on the webinar to ask their questions. Okay, let's see.
We have one in the chat box.
Right. In the second category, this is for Ben, in the second category, assessing benefits, are these impact evaluations with QED or similar approaches?
Do you want me to take them in one, Ed, or to take a few?
Yeah, go ahead. This
Okay.
is for you.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm guessing by QED we're quasi-experimental design, if I'm not getting that incorrect. But yeah, as Vijaya mentioned, we have the way that the UNDP support was rolled out, we won't have the ability to do an RCT for this work because it's there to be doing the energy is principally there or provided as a contribution to national development, and because countries have prioritized this and the intervention groups have been selected by for various reasons, and in most cases actually selected to because they are a demonstration site of energy access. So they're not in any way randomly selected. It would be a quasi-experimental approach to doing this. And I think there's a lot to learn about the way that in which groups were selected for this. Because I think there's an interesting question around, proving a model, and to do so that may involve working with people who are perhaps more or energy users or potential energy users that are potentially leaning towards, already have certain conditions that make success more likely from the energy system. And now our job as the evaluators would be to look and see, well, given that UNDP is a development organization and has an emphasis on the leave no one behind principle, how do we transfer that, or what can we learn and what can we take to groups that perhaps are not naturally have the conditions that would lead to success. So these are some of the things that we're thinking about in the design, and why we kind of picked the control and intervention groups as we did.
Great. I'll ask a question, and we'll start with Vijaya, but then Ben, I want to hear it from the energy perspective as an energy evaluator. And the UNDP, for me, particularly from today's talk, you deal with government agencies, either UNDP offices in these other countries or in the other countries' government agencies. And then there's the private sector. And I want to understand a little better how UNDP, whether you defer to the government agencies to work with the private sector to either develop programs or to evaluate programs, or does UNDP work directly with the private sector? And the private sector, of course, is big. It could be banks, or it could be research institutions, or even academia. How does that come into play? So again, I'll start with Vijaya. Private UNDP, government agencies, private sector. How does it all work?
Thank you, Ed. Like I said, like in 145 countries, UNDP's primary signature partner is the government, and it works with several actors at the country level. First, a simple answer to your question is with both. UNDP works with the private actors, private institutions, private financial institutions, private sector providers, and also with the government. But also, importantly, what we expect UNDP to do is to enable governments to work with the private sector, because many governments do not have the capacity to engage with the private sector. How do you go about de-risking the market space? How do you enable confidence of the private sector in engaging with the government? So one expects UNDP to also help governments to work with the private sector. Private sector, again, very broadly, with a range of actors, providers to finance, private sector financiers. How does the government go about it? And also many governments expect UNDP to help them in that area. So I would say both. more importantly, on helping, because it's easy for UNDP as an UN agency to directly work and implement programs on behalf of the government. But it's more difficult to help the governments, particularly the countries, least developed countries, lower MICs, to help them to de-risk their policies, to de-risk the marketplace, to help them to engage with the private sector. That's more difficult. So one would expect that's the mandate of UNDP. We expect UNDP to do more there, but it does both.
Okay. And Ben,
And Ben would,
oh,
sorry, go ahead. Sorry,
go ahead.
Ben.
Well, I was
Yes,
going to say for
Ben would
Ben.
share the example of energy where part of the energy evaluation is also on because only part of the investment is on off-grids and households, but a significant part is also on enabling policies, enabling private sector engagement, because private actors are very critical for off-grid efforts. So how does UNDP support the government to strengthen its private sector engagement, to de-risk the policies for better private sector engagement? So that is a very critical aspect. Energy is one. I think Ben will be happy to share more about that. And even in other areas, this is a very critical area. I think many of our evaluations says UNDP does not do enough in the later, helping the governments to engage with the private sector rather than UNDP directly working. There is one area of UNDP support is mandated that it should enable development financing, not get money to do the programs, help the government to develop, to raise development financing. So in that sense, it should help the governments to engage. I'll stop.
Right. Okay. Ben, I just do want to go back to you from the off-grid energy. In addition to what Vijay was saying with the interactions of government and the private sector, from an evaluation point of view, is the evaluation only going from UNDP, or are you tapping into evaluators in, say, a particular country? Because most countries there are some evaluators, and particularly energy evaluators, and particularly on off-grid, which has been going on for years. Are you directly interacting with them, or again, deferring to the government you're working with and let them deal with the evaluation community? How does that work?
Oh, that's an interesting reflection there. I mean, it would be great to hear. We will have case studies and desk studies as part of this, where we will consult broadly within each country that we're focusing on in more depth, and that will typically be in the government, as you mentioned, private sector, but also academia, CSOs, and evaluators. I mean, we will bring national evaluators into this for the particular countries. I would love to hear, I mean, as well, people on this group or any other forums as well for the countries that you work in, views on the energy sector, on what has and hasn't worked. I think that would be a great contribution, but also any of the research you've done on Nepal, Cambodia in particular, but any other research from the region, I think would be very valuable, because as I mentioned, we're kind of looking at Asia as a case where we may be able to learn and to transfer some lessons about expanding energy access, particularly with strong government buy-in, but it would be also helpful to hear the evaluation community's perspectives on those as well.
Good. Two more things, and then we'll get to the end here. But or one comment, and then somebody has a question. The comment I have is go to our webpage or YouTube channel, where you'll see there are past webinars on evaluations, and we have you'll be able to identify some of the evaluators of energy projects, and I think at least Nepal for sure. I'm not sure about Cambodia, but you can start there, and then yeah, I'll stop there. The question we have from one of the participants: would be interesting to hear what extent you may use foresight methods. Now, I'm not sure what foresight methods are, but if we'll start with Ben, if you know and can respond, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't think, I mean, in our particular evaluation, I wouldn't say we have any particular approaches. I think there are others in UNDP and in our office that are thinking of through foresight approaches, and maybe Vijaya will be able to talk a bit more of those. But what we are cognizant, I mean, that the energy sector or geopolitics around energy is vastly different and than what it was, say, 5 years ago, and that it's changing, and that everything from kind of currency fluctuations to oil prices to the price of solar photovoltaic is changing, and that has an impact on what our um, what has happened in the UNDP programming or UNDP program context over the past years. And we also need to be cognizant of that when we put forward our recommendations to UNDP. It won't just be a set of recommendations within a vacuum. It will be kind of looking perhaps at what its partner countries are dealing with or struggling with in terms of their socioeconomics, but also their commitments to say the SDGs and but also to national development objectives as well. So there will be there is a process in our evaluation of looking at what has changed over the past decade, but then also looking forward for what our recommendations are. But maybe Vijaya's got some more on specific approaches.
Vijaya?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think in the past 3, 4, maybe 5 years, UNDP has invested quite a bit in foresight analysis. And there are a couple of evaluations which were done even in our section. They use the foresight approach. But this is my personal view, not UNDP's view, because UNDP has invested in foresight analysis. I really don't think it's anything new. It's just every time there's a new word, for me, any evaluation I do, there is a foresight. I'm thinking about future of UNDP, what UNDP will be in 5 years from now, and how my recommendation is going to impact that. Where are other actors where UNDP can relate to? And if this is foresight, we are already doing it. I need more convincing. I personally don't use it because I really think I'm already using it. I don't call it foresight. So for those foresight enthusiasts, I would request you to look into how it is different from what we are not already doing. Because how can we give a recommendation if I'm not thinking about the future of development cooperation, how agencies are there, where UNDP fits in? I can't give a recommendation. So that's foresight. That means I'm already doing it, but I don't call it foresight. So that's my fundamental disagreement. I think my foresight team in the UNDP totally agrees with me. They told me so. But there are some who like it. Like any method and approaches, some we take fancy for certain things. I like qualitative comparative analysis. Some may not like it. So I see it that way. But if we are a serious researcher or an evaluator, we're already doing foresight.
Okay, thank you. I want to thank everyone before handing it over to Nazir. He had some last comments, but this is very interesting. I've learned a lot about the UNDP and their evaluation efforts, and I wish you success in the off-grid world as well. So, Nazir, or you want to take it over from here?
Great. Thank you so much. Thanks, Vijay and Ben, for the very insightful presentations. I also learned a lot, and I'm definitely going to check out the different guides that you showed. Thanks to our participants as well. I have put a couple of links in the chat box. Would be great to have you in our mailing list and in our LinkedIn group. We do have a lot of insightful discussions happening there, and in our YouTube channel, as Ed shared, you can find previous webinars and presentations from previous conferences that EEAP has organized. We would also be very happy to get your feedback, so I have put a small survey link there. It will take less than 2 minutes. We have another webinar planned for June, so we will be sharing that detail with you as well. So thank you so much. It's late for some of you in the Asia Pacific region, so wish you good night, and to the rest of you, a very good day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Goodbye.
you. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.